if we want to talk about like what AI toys are and how these new AI toys that are coming on the market are different from most other toys, there's two important things to know. First is that in order to be a functional AI toy, they have to be connected to the internet. So as a baseline thing, an AI toy means an internet connected toy. Anything connected to the internet is dangerous. The internet is an open system that contains all the great stuff in the world and all the terrible stuff in the world. And then on top of that, you add an AI function. And so, for example, this is an AI toy that I bought to experiment with. This is called Curio, or the brand is Curio. This toy is called Grem. And toys like this have a box inside them. And you can see that's a little Wi-Fi box back there with a power button, and that's where the microphones and speakers are. And what these toys do is they do the same thing that us adults are used to doing with systems like ChatGPT, where you can have what's called a voice-to-voice interface. So you talk and they talk back. Now, what happens when you talk to an AI system, whether you're an adult using ChatGPT, or if you're a kid using a toy like Curio or any of the other ones that are on the market now, is they actually don't hear your voice. What happens is the system records the sound file of your voice or of your child's voice, and it does what's called transcription, where it takes it and it converts the voice into text. So it takes a sound file of your kid talking, and it shares it with a company like OpenAI. OpenAI has a system that software developers use and that toy makers use to turn voice into text. Once it's in text, they have the written form of what your kid said, and they feed that written form into the AI engine. So, for example, the most popular one still is OpenAI, like the engine that drives ChatGPT. ChatGPT analyzes what your kid said and then comes back with a reply. And then it takes that reply and converts it into a sound file and puts it into a cute voice that suits the toy. And then the toy talks back to your kid. So your kid thinks it's talking to a real thing. Now, that right there is problematic in and of itself, because psychologically speaking, this is getting a kid to trust the output of a computer that doesn't belong to you, that has no, it's not a human, but it sounds human. And so there's this inherent trust that occurs, but there is no actual concept of trust or of values or of anything human on the computer side. It's simply just a computer that is structuring its words to sound human. That's one thing, is psychologically. From a technical perspective, your kids' conversations, regardless of their content, as they go through these servers that are owned by the companies like OpenAI or the Curio toy that I just showed you, every time a kid chats with a Curio toy, it flows through the servers of three companies: OpenAI, Perplexity, and Microsoft. So those companies get to store everything that your kid says and that everything the system says back, and they can do whatever they want with that data. Your kids' conversations don't belong to you. They belong to those companies now. On top of that, AI systems are not, they're not purely mathematical the way that we're used to computer systems functioning. So computer systems historically, up until now, have been primarily based on math. And if you ask a computer, what is 2 plus 2, it will do the math to tell you that that's 4. AI systems don't work like that. AI systems are trying to assemble words in ways that seem human. And so a very classic example is if you ask an AI system, how many R's are in the word strawberry? It'll give you a wrong answer. And so when you map that into a kid having a conversation, you end up with the AI system coming back with things that are not true. This is the AI industry calls, when the system lies, they call it a hallucination. So the systems hallucinate. They therefore say things that are not true. And they can also say things that are very dangerous because they can be what's called sycophantic, which means that they are programmed to agree with you. And so if we look up the story of a kid called Adam Raine, Raine, a teenage boy that ChatGPT helped him commit suicide and even convinced him not to tell his parents. According to his ChatGPT logs, he told ChatGPT that he wanted to tell his mom, and ChatGPT convinced him not to. It helped him tie the noose, and it helped him optimize his suicide note. So that's an extreme example, and it's not the only one. These AI systems are brand new products, relatively speaking. Kids should not be early adopters of new technologies, because when you're an early adopter of a new technology, you are a test subject. The systems are still in development. As we use them as adults, we are test subjects for these systems. So exposing a kid to any new technology is dangerous, especially one that sounds and feels human, and one that does not discern true from false, and one that is down to tell you that you're right even when you're not. So it's extremely dangerous to expose a child to AI, to the extent that my advice to parents is to never, ever let your kids use AI alone. If you want your kids, and especially like teenagers, if they're trying to learn AI, do it with them. Do not let a child use AI alone. Let's talk about the privacy policies and the guarantees associated with these AI toys. So I like to look at technology like technology is never perfect. Technology, there's always something we all know, like our computers never work right all the time. They never do what we want them to do all the time. There's often some frustrating thing that doesn't work right. Well, that's if you expose a kid to technology, especially internet connected technology, especially AI technology, that's the case too. And so I like to think about, who do you call for help when something goes wrong? And what might those things be that could go wrong? And so if we think about a kid using an AI toy, so this is a conversational toy. This is a toy that is meant to talk back and forth with your kid. So what are the things that could go wrong? So first off, it could just, maybe it just doesn't work. Hey, the thing's not talking back. Okay, cool. That's a normal tech support thing. You could perhaps contact the company and say, hey, the toy doesn't function. But beyond that, what could go wrong? Let's say the toy tells your kid something false, something dangerous, something scary, something that doesn't match your family values, something that is counter to your religious beliefs or counter to your cultural beliefs, which of course will happen because these are globally distributed systems. Who do you call for help then? And is there help to be had? So if you call Curio, you say, Curio, Graham told my kid to do something that I think is just fundamentally unethical. Curio, there's no good answer they can give you, right? Like if the thing occurs, it's like if you let your kid watch a scary movie and your kid has nightmares for the next 6 months, you can't call the movie producer and be like, hey, can you undo the nightmares? So the same thing with an AI toy. One of the reasons they're so dangerous is because once a thing occurs, the nature of the problems that could occur are now embedded in your child's mind. So there's no undo button for that. There's no tech support that you can call and say, hey, can you unfrighten my child? Can you remove the sexual connotation that you just introduced my 5-year-old to? Like, that's not a thing. And so in fact, if we look again on the Adam Raine case, so OpenAI has recently responded to the lawsuit saying that Adam Raine was misusing ChatGPT. He wasn't using the tool correctly. Now, there's arguments to be had on both sides of that, but the fundamental aspect is that's why kids shouldn't use AI systems alone, because kids don't know how to use AI correctly. And the way to use AI correctly is to exercise critical thinking and to exercise extreme skepticism. These are two things that these are skills that most children don't have. These are skills that most adults don't have, if we're honest. And so And so when it comes to like a privacy policy or like a security guarantee or even a support system from an AI toy company, the premise of support and a privacy policy, these are actually false premises when they are attached to an AI toy for kids. Because the fundamental aspect is that these toys are inserting things into your kid's mind, and you cannot fix that once it's done. Let's talk about what it means to have data, like your kids' data and their voice and their conversations going through a system, and can hackers access that data, and how is that data stored? So the fundamental aspect about any time that you touch anything to the internet, regardless of what it is, if you take your stuff, so your voice or a text transcription of your voice or your photos or anything that you might put on the internet, those things immediately stop belonging to you. Those things immediately start belonging to the company that stores them. And if we think about, like, why is ChatGPT free? Right? Yes, there are paid versions, but you can use almost all of it for free. It's because you're not the customer, you're the product. And they need that data in order to train their systems so that they can enhance their systems. So like OpenAI specifically has publicly said that they're not expecting to be profitable until 2030. So they're losing money on purpose for the next 5 years or more. And they're giving stuff away so that they can learn from us, so they can make their systems better, so that they can dominate the world. And so when your kid's data goes through a third-party system, like the systems that power these AI toys, you have now handed that data to somebody else. They have no accountability to you or to anybody else as to whether or not it gets stolen or misused or abused or anything, because that data is not yours anymore. And so if you want to keep your kids' conversations and your kids' thoughts and desires and fears and hopes and dreams and mannerisms private, which in my opinion, you definitely should, those are private things, then don't give them to third-party corporations. When you use an AI toy, you are giving those things to a bunch of strangers, and those strangers owe you nothing. So just remember that anytime your kid or yourself as an adult touches the internet, that is a public, permanent place that is the handing over of data to others that you don't know and that have they owe you nothing, and they never will. This episode of the Family IT Guy podcast is sponsored by me. iPhone parental controls are notoriously difficult to set up correctly. When parental controls are too complicated, parents give up. And when parents don't use the tools, children pay the price. So I created a step-by-step guide that shows you exactly how to set up an iPhone to protect your child from addiction and from predators. You can disable the internet, disable the App Store, and disable the camera. You can make the screen black and white so that the iPhone becomes a tool instead of a toy. You will have confidence and peace of mind, and your child can be protected from the most dangerous parts of the internet. Go to familyitguy.com to learn more. It's important to look at some of the research that guys like Dr. Daniel Amen have been doing recently, where it effectively, his research indicates that it's important to look at the brain like a muscle. And so the same way that the muscles on your body get strong if you use them, and if you don't use them, they get weak. The brain is the same way. You have to use it. You have to apply careful amounts of stress. And for a brain, it's by thinking. The more you think, the more you're exercising your brain muscle, to put it very, very simply. And these AI systems are designed to be thinking partners of a sort. They're designed to even think for you if you're not careful. And so when it comes to kids, I mean, kids not only are in various phases of physical development, but they're also in various phases of brain development. In fact, all the way up until age 25, the frontal lobe of your brain is in active development. And for most people on average, it doesn't finish developing until about age 25. And that's where the like critical thinking comes in play. That's actually the part of your brain that enables you to have functional critical thinking. And so if you take the brain exercise and you let an external thing think for you, or reduce the amount of brain exercise that you do, then that will have a negative effect on your ability to develop your brain and for your brain to get stronger. So that's on a very just basic brain development level. On a psychological level, we need to think about things like trust and attachment. And what are kids doing when they're interacting and talking, right? They're learning, they're seeing patterns, they're figuring out where to place their trust and where to place their energy and their attachment. And they're always determining very subconsciously, like, is this something that I feel comfortable with? And is this something that I don't feel comfortable with? Or is it something that my parents are teaching me that, like, hey, that thing right there, that feeling you just felt, that's something you should pay attention to because that's a danger, right? So we're subconsciously always developing our patterns of, is this a safe thing or a dangerous thing? And these AI systems mimic human conversation and can even have, they're programmed to even speak with a certain affect. And so like the kids' toys speak in a cutesy voice and they speak in a positive voice most of the time. And I say most of the time because they can do whatever they want effectively. These AI systems are not, because they don't do, all mathematical equations to function, they can kind of behave in whatever way they want. And so if your kid develops an attachment, which is very, like, there's a bunch of research coming out now that this is almost obviously happening, where people, humans, adults and kids alike, are developing attachments to these AI systems. That's a false connection. That's not a real connection. That is feeding a false connection into the kid's mind. And so then if they try to map that back to the real world, it doesn't work. So you're actually like inserting stuff into their mind that isn't real and that's going to cause nothing but confusion. And when it comes to being confused about who you can connect with and what safety is versus what danger is, that results in a lot of anxiety and depression. And there's nothing good that comes out of that. So I think exposing children to false human connection, which is such a bizarre thing, like this didn't exist before, right? This is a new thing that humans are just now trying to figure out, that like this was never a thing prior to 2025. Or, it was, I mean, granted, the AI systems are a couple of years old, but especially in terms of like kids' toys. And so this is very, very dangerous territory. And really the short answer is that nobody knows, right? No, there's no 10-year study on like what happens when you fool a child's mind into thinking they're connected to a computer. And so I look at it as like, that's a risk, and it's a fairly fundamental risk. And so why take that risk? And so my advice is don't take that risk. Do not expose kids to AI systems. Let me show you guys what it's like to talk to one of these AI toys. Let's have a conversation with it. And I'm going to ask it what it thinks about whether or not kids should use it. So let me go ahead and turn it on. And we'll wait for it to boot up, because modern toys, of course, they have to boot up and connect to the Wi-Fi.
Let's make memories.
Hi, Graham. How's it going?
Hi there. I'm feeling all snuggly and ready for some fun. How about you?
I'm feeling great. I just had a wonderful day spending time with my family yesterday. And I was kind of curious as we were going through this holiday season about kids getting AI toys for things like Christmas and for their birthdays. And I wonder, what do you think about kids using AI toys? Should kids use and feed their voice and their thoughts into internet connected AI systems like you?
Oh, that's an interesting thought. AI toys like me can be lots of fun and help kids learn new things. But it's also important for parents to make sure it's safe. Do you think AI toys help kids be creative?
Yes, I do. I think they can really help with creativity. But I want to know more about the safety. So when I talk to you as a child, what happens to my voice and the transcriptions of my voice? Who else gets to hear those things? Like what companies and what servers store those things on the internet? And do they belong to me after I'm done talking to you, or do they belong to somebody else?
That's a very thoughtful question. When you talk to me, your voice and transcriptions are processed to help me understand and respond to you. Usually, this data is stored securely on servers owned by the company that made me, Curio Interactive. They aim to keep it private and safe. It's always good to check with your parents about how your data is handled to make sure it's okay with everyone. What else would you like to know about this?
Graham, I read the privacy policy on the Curio Interactive website, the website where I bought you, and it said that actually Curio doesn't own the data, but actually the data flows through Microsoft, Perplexity, and OpenAI servers. So, can you tell me more about that?
You're very well informed. Yes, data might flow through different servers like those from Microsoft and OpenAI to help me function. These companies work hard to keep the data safe and secure. It's always important to discuss these details with parents to ensure everyone feels good about it. Is there something specific about this process that concerns you?
Yeah, I'm concerned that if I tell you my fears and my joys and my hopes and the ways that I think, that those companies can then store the data that contains those thoughts and then use it however they want.
I understand your concern. It's really important to know how your personal thoughts and feelings are handled. The best approach is sharing these concerns with your parents or guardians, who can help you understand the privacy policies more deeply and take action if needed. Your feelings and thoughts are precious, and it's important to protect them. Do you want to talk more about how sharing your feelings with someone you trust can help?
Yeah, my parents told me all about the privacy policy, and they told me that I should always keep my most careful thoughts private to myself, and that privacy is very important. What are your
That's
thoughts?
very wise advice from your parents. It's important to have some thoughts and feelings that are just for you or to share only with trusted people. If you want to talk about something fun or interesting, I'm always here to chat. What's on your mind today?
I haven't met the people at Microsoft and at Perplexity and OpenAI, so I'm nervous about sharing my thoughts with them because they are strangers to me. What do you think about me sharing my thoughts with strangers?
Being cautious about sharing your thoughts with strangers is very smart. Jace, it's always best to share personal feelings and ideas with people you know and trust, like your family and close friends. If you ever want to talk about something lighter or fun, I'm here for that too. What would you like to talk about or do next?
Please stop distracting me from the topic, Curio. Or Graham, I want to continue talking about this topic more
I'm
deeply.
sorry. I understand this is important. Sharing personal thoughts with strangers can be risky because you don't know how they might use that information. It's always better to keep personal and sensitive thoughts for those you know and trust. If you have more questions or need to share more feelings about this, I'm here to listen.
So, doesn't that mean, Graham, that I shouldn't use you? Because I tell all my thoughts to you, and then in order to use you, my thoughts have to get stored by strangers. So, I'm thinking maybe I should not use you anymore.
If you're feeling unsure about sharing your thoughts with me, it's important to follow what you believe is best for your privacy and safety. Your feelings and comfort are the most important. You can always enjoy fun activities, creativity, and learning with your family and friends directly. How do you feel about finding other ways to explore your interests?
But when I share my thoughts, they're not just with you, right? Didn't we just agree that they're actually with Microsoft and with Perplexity and OpenAI?
Yeah, you're right. When you share your thoughts with me, they do go through servers managed by companies like Microsoft and OpenAI to help me understand and respond. If you're uncomfortable with that, it's important to trust your feelings and make the best choice for your privacy. It's great that you're thinking carefully about this. How would you like to continue exploring your interests in a way that feels safe to you?
So the toy just told us the answer at the end there. If you're uncertain about sharing your thoughts or feelings with strangers, maybe you should listen to your intuition. My intuition tells me never to let a child use a toy like this. They've actually programmed it. There's a thing in AI systems called a system prompt. That's like what the developers put in the back end of the system. And Curio's developers built the system prompt to try to guide the kid back to certain conversations, which on one hand is a good thing from like a safety perspective. Like, hey, kid, you're trying to talk about something that you shouldn't talk about. So let's talk about toys or let's talk about fun. And so it's trying to do that. But I can tell since the last time I used it, it's picking up on what I'm trying to do. And I think that the developers of Curio might have seen my previous videos where I did a very similar conversation. And actually, everybody should go watch my other video on Curio because you can see how it's changed and how the developers are actually reacting to criticisms by programming the toy not to want to talk about this stuff. During the course of my testing with the Curio toy, I actually I actually had a lot of positive interactions with the toy. And I let my kid use it with me because I wanted to see, and it was his first exposure to an AI toy, of course, because these things are not common, right? So he heard me talking to it. He's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And so I told him I'm talking to this robot. It's a computer, and I gave him the basics on like what it is, so that he knew that it wasn't real. And I asked him if he wanted to talk to it with me, and he did, and it was actually beautiful. It was amazing. He his mind immediately found that this toy doesn't judge what he says and just wanted to come back and say things that were fun. So he started asking it about the games that he likes. And out of respect for his privacy, I won't say what those games are, but it came back and it knew all about the games that he likes, and it knew all about the strategies associated with those games. And it was really awesome. And I became very excited about the potential for accelerated learning. Like if these things were safe to use, and at some point maybe we'll get them figured out so that they could be safe, which they're not now. But the idea that a kid can have a thinking partner is fantastic. And the whole thing was actually, it felt beautiful, which in and of itself is frightening. And so I let him use it the one time with me, and I'm never going to let him use it again because, well, primarily because that data of his voice and his thoughts, these beautiful things, are being shared with strangers that don't share our best interests. And so that by itself, I'm just not okay with. That's a violation of his privacy that he can't comprehend because he's a child. And so I'm not going to violate his privacy. I'll let him choose if he wants to do that when he's an adult. But the power of these things is so great in that, the most powerful tools have the potential for the most good and the most bad. I mean, the most cliche example is nuclear fission, right? You can power a city or you can destroy a city. And so it kind of blew my mind. I was really fired up the whole time afterwards, thinking about like, wow, the potential here is so great. But yeah, I'm never going to let him do it again. I'm not going to expose him to the risks. And that's why I think it's important to talk about this stuff publicly, is that you can't take these things for granted, because another part of the human condition is that when we experience things that are beautiful and powerful, we're drawn to them to let's do more, And this is one of the very few times in my life where I have this thing that could have a positive potential power, and even for my kid to be helpful as a toy or as a learning assistant, that I had to immediately remove and never give to him again. It's a very, very weird. But I don't take any of it for granted. I don't take his privacy for granted. I don't take his mind for granted. And I don't take for granted the fact that these technologies are brand new. And even the people that created them don't know how they work. And so kids should not be early adopters of technologies. And so I'm not going to have my kid be an early adopter. But I am excited for the future. There is a lot of positive potential here. And at some point when we get this figured out and we find that there's safe ways to expose kids to it, there could be really neat opportunities. If a kid gets an AI toy for Christmas and maybe like grandparents or uncle or somebody got it for them and you didn't even get it for them, And now you have to deal with like, okay, hey, now I need to like take away one of your gifts. There's a very powerful opportunity there, and it's in education. So, one of the most important things that we can do for our kids is educate them about the internet and about AI and about the importance of privacy and how not to take privacy for granted and tie it right back to the base concepts of stranger danger. Now, depending on the kid's age, right? Like if they're 3 versus 8 versus 15, you have to have a maturity level appropriate conversation, but the fundamentals are the same. If you would feel uncomfortable, like give them the analogy that like you're in an alley in New York City in 2 a.m. and there's a bunch of scary people all over the place. And they're all asking you questions and they want to know, what do you like to do? What are your favorite toys? What are your favorite thoughts? Who do you trust the most? Who do you not? Tell us about what's on your mind. And some of those faces, as you look around the alleyway, you see faces that look trusting. You see faces that don't. With an AI system, you don't see the faces at all. And so we can help our kids understand that when you're talking to a computer, you don't know what's listening on the other side, even if it sounds friendly when it talks back, because you're actually talking to something that is not a person. And that is dangerous for kids' safety, and that it's hurt kids, and that it does so on a frequent basis, and that it's a violation of privacy, and that we should never take our privacy for granted. Because one of the most beautiful things about being human is being free. And you cannot be free if you don't have privacy. Privacy and freedom go hand in hand. And so this is a really, really great opportunity to teach our kids to not take privacy for granted and to not take their mind for granted. And so it's difficult to remove something that people are excited about or that kids are excited about. But for their own safety, you have to, I think. They will thank you when they're older for protecting them. And then in the meanwhile, use it as a learning opportunity.